The number 2 ranked team is out of the World Cup. Yes, Belgium is out after a 0-0 draw with Croatia. That draw is all Croatia needed to advance out of Group F. Joining them will be Morocco, who topped the group after beating Canada 2-1. It's the first time since 1986 that Morocco will play in the last 16 of the World Cup. Welcome inside room 442. It's Albert Vartanian, James Sharman, Sarah Pariah, Michael Singh. Speaking of 1986, Canada. So, since 1986 is their first time back at the World Cup. A lot to break down, a lot to talk about. This was a performance, I think, of two halves for Canada. What did you make of their final appearance?
Yeah, so. I mean, listen, it was a terrible first half. Let's not kid ourselves. It was poor. I think they were set up wrong. Morocco's a really great team who were playing for something that more motivated. And in the second half, Canada looked much better, of course. I think Morocco sat back a little bit more. But overall, it was kind of what we expected. I think Canada didn't embarrass themselves. But in the end, they went out with more of a whimper, I think, than perhaps we'd have hoped.
Sarah, you called it. You had Morocco to beat Canada. We were talking about fast money football yesterday. So pretty much what you expected from the Moroccans here?
Yeah, 100%. I honestly thought they could have maybe gotten another one, but so could have Canada at one point there. But I think they were the better side and they deserved to win. And they, like James said, had something to play for. My hope is that I hope that people here now look at this Moroccan team and don't overlook them, because how many people in Canada said, well, that's where we're going to get our 3 points? Absolutely not. Morocco has been a good team, and I'm so happy that they're going through first. I know it's awful like that Canada are out, but it's nice to see Belgium go with us too. See you later.
Topping the group as well, Mikey. Let's talk big picture for Canada. How would you describe this World Cup for them?
Bittersweet is the word that I would use to describe, I think, Canada at this World Cup, because you know what? When you think about the 90 minutes they played against Belgium, the 20 minutes against Croatia, now this 45 against Morocco, you can look at it as a whole and be like, there was more positives than negatives, but then the negatives were also really bad. So that's the bitter part. I think this is a big learning opportunity for Canada overall moving forward. And yeah, listen, they were getting their feet wet. This is kind of what we sort of expected overall when we were heading into this tournament. But I just hope that, and I'm actually really happy that this happened, was the final 45 against Morocco today. They went on a little bit of a higher note, because if they were to perform like they did in the first half and went out that way, which, by the way, they had every reason to do that, I think it would have tainted what this overall World Cup was.
The narrative would have shifted completely, wouldn't it? It would be considered a disappointment, this World Cup. In the end, I don't think you can call it disappointment at all. For me, it was just adequate. This is kind of what I expected, not to get too much out of it, maybe getting points at some point. And like Sarah said, listen, Morocco, we've dismissed them naively as a country from day one. That's a team that's, blooded itself at AFCON. They played well in 2018. They tied Spain in the group phase. I mean, can you imagine Canada tying Spain in the group phase? Be like a national celebration, right? So it's a good team that's so far ahead of Canada right now. I think they were saying they broadcast 15 Tier 1 players in Morocco, 2 or 3 for Canada, like top 5 leagues in world football. That's got to switch. So it is what it is. They came, they played, they don't embarrass themselves, they can leave with some head held high. I still think we're in a good spot. But still a lot of questions to be asked, I think.
Sarah, do you think this should be a little bit of a pat on the back moment for Canada, considering they could have came out against Morocco, dejected, maybe a little sulking a little bit, but instead they showed up despite a poor first half performance?
Yeah, but I think most teams would at the World Cup. Like, that's the thing. This is Canada's first time at the World Cup in a very long time. But most teams, even if they're out, they still come to that third match because they want to walk away with some dignity. So I don't know if it's a pat on the back. You do that regardless. This is your team. You're representing your country. It's the last time you're going to be on the international stage. I'm happy Canada did that. I don't know. I'm very I feel like I don't know how to feel about it. I'm not upset. I'm not disappointed. I'm not overly proud. It's expected. Everything.
Expected, but I also feel like it kind of brought Canada and Canada supporters back down to earth.
Which is important, I think. I think if you took the temperature of the country after Belgium and then told them then, by the way, you get smashed by Croatia and then fall 2-1 to Morocco, they'd be devastated at that point, because I think they built themselves up as a fan base so high. Wow, we almost should be in Belgium. Well, as it turns out, Belgium was a really, really mediocre team at this World Cup. Not nearly what we think that they should have been. So in that regard, it's disappointing, I suppose. But when we look at the big picture, listen, look how far this team's come. in the last 2 years. We were all there in 2019 at BMO Field, right, when they beat the US. That for me is when it all kind of began to click into place. Like, oh, actually, John Herdman's got onto something here. It's pretty good. Then a good Gold Cup with some of the stars missing. Okay, and then qualifying, and because this beautiful tidal wave of euphoria through qualifying, and then the World Cup, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, now we're seeing this team against non-Concacaf teams, and they're still a golf in class, but they weren't embarrassed. So I think a mild applause is sufficient, but no more than that.
Yeah, you know what? It's easy to forget the journey as well. And in some ways, I feel like the journey was more exciting and more important than them actually getting to play in the World Cup. Let's talk about some individual performances. Your most disappointing player for Canada at this World Cup.
Oh, there's a couple of candidates. For me, I'm gonna go with Milan Borjan.
Okay.
He was my most disappointing player. Listen, he's done so much for this country, especially throughout qualifying. If you think about some of those moments, some of those saves that he made, Canada would not be entering the World Cup with the momentum they were entering the World Cup if it had not been for Milan Borjan. But I think at this World Cup, very subpar. And I'm not just talking about I don't even know what to call it, just dreadful mistake today. I'm talking about his performance overall. I thought there was a couple of goals that he let in that maybe he would have wanted back. And that's not the Milan Borjan that I think we've come to see.
Sarah, Jonathan David, a lot of expectations were on his shoulders to score the goals for Canada. A lot of touted him to be the first guy to score. He didn't do that, had somewhat of a disappointing World Cup. How would you describe his performance?
He's absolutely the worst player that played in Canada, that played on that pitch. I think he was such a disappointment. He plays in a top 5 team in the top 5 league in Lille in France. I expected so much more from him. And it wasn't even that maybe he doesn't score, because we scored 1 goal in, all 3 games. But he just was absent. He was not helping plays. He was completely irrelevant almost. And it was almost better when he wasn't playing. And that was what the concern was for me. Because I think, I don't know, maybe the expectation I had because of where he plays is that high. But you're one of the best players for Canada. And I thought you were abysmal.
For me, I mean, listen, he ran a hell of a lot, right? A lot for a guy in his position. He's also a guy that's paid to score goals, essentially for his country and his club. That being said, I think it was an example of just the depth up front for Canada. He didn't get any space on the ball, right? People knew, the teams knew, focus on John David and you'll take away the scoring threat of Canada. And it just shows there's no other options. They could put 2 or 3 guys in the box, for example, because they didn't have any threat beyond him to score goals. And I think that's a real concern moving forward, and where this team needs to focus on. I mean, there's numerous places to focus on, but up front, we get lost in him being a really good goal scorer, scoring over 10 goals this year so far for Lille. This team needs more than just John Davis scoring goals, and when they're not on the squad, it's easy to contain.
Okay, quickly, James. There's obviously going to be somewhat of a changing of the guard. I'm going to assume that was Atiba Hutchinson's last match for Canada. If it is, who is the next captain?
Oh, next captain. That's a good one. It's funny because, you don't pick squads for 2026 in 2022, right? There's still big tournaments coming up, the Gold Cup coming up, maybe a Copa America, who knows? So some of these veterans might stick around, but I think you're right. I think Atiba will step aside. I mean, Fonzie makes sense because he's the face. They can sell him. I don't know what leader he is behind the scenes. He's very vocal. He's very popular. Is he a guy you want leading the team on the field? Do you want to just focus purely on doing his job on the left-hand side, not the right-hand side? I wonder if Alice Johnston would be a guy to consider. It's tough to say because the veterans are going to move aside. The young players coming up, it's probably too soon to be a captain. That's a really, really good question.
Mikey, in 30 seconds or less, who's your next captain?
I'm going back and forth between 2 players. I'm not sure if it's 2 players that actually see much of the pitch in 2026. I'm going back and forth between Jonathan Osorio and Junior Hoylett. Those are my 2.
Okay, I love the Junior Hoylett show, but maybe not a lot of time left, right? In the Canada shirt? We'll see. We'll have to wait and see. I have one more question regarding Canada, and we'll talk about that after the break, and it revolves around a one Mr. John Herdman. Welcome back to Room 442. We ended our last segment talking about Canada's potential next captain. Sarah, I didn't get a chance to come to you. You mentioned that off air. Who will be your captain after Thibaut Hutchison?
It has to be Steven Eustáquio, and both these guys said it after, and I was like, why didn't Albert ask me? But no, to me, I mean, he has the leadership. I think he's also, Mikey said this off air, but he's willing to die for the badge, and he is, even when he plays for Porto, like he's such a go-getter, and he's willing to stand up to anyone. And I think he's such a well-rounded player. I think he would be the guy, like, way over anyone else in my eyes.
Yeah, hard not to pick him. You can tell he has that about
It's
him.
going to be Fonzie. Who are we kidding?
Yeah.
You know, just
Everything
think
else is
about it.
hipster.
Right.
I'm not saying it's the right choice. I don't know. But it's Fonzie.
Let me relate this to hockey a little bit. Like, I think about Fonzie in the same light I think about Austin Matthews, the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
Matthews isn't given that captaincy. Maybe it's an extra load that he doesn't have to put on
Yeah, but they had
himself.
another superstar.
In John
John
Tavares.
Tavares, right? I don't think Canada's got another superstar
Fair.
at this point.
Not yet.
Right.
Not yet.
Let's talk Leafs, shall we?
So this leads me to my next question. Who's going to be the man or woman to present the armband to that next captain? I mean, at the moment, John Herdman is at the helm. Based on what you've seen at this World Cup, their performances, what you heard from John Herdman, everything, his stock was at an all-time high heading into the World Cup. Where is it now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder if, I mean, it may have been diminished slightly. I think the last couple of games you could question certain things. Certainly the last game, you'll face some tough questions about the setup there. Why was John David on the bench? Why was Alphonso Davies playing on the right-hand side or up top for much of that game? So maybe it's slightly diminished, but I think, honestly, clubs knew who this guy was before the World Cup. I don't think they'll have their mind changed over the course of 3 games at a World Cup, to be honest with you. But it wasn't a good World Cup for John Herdman. I wouldn't say it's a bad World Cup for John Herdman, but I wasn't overly impressed given what happened, off the field and obviously on the field.
Yeah, Sarah, what do you think?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think that the thing is, we're talking about a team that just doesn't have necessarily the talent yet of some of these other teams in the World Cup, the Argentinas, the Brazils, Spain, whatever you want to compare it to. So it's not necessarily all on him. And also these guys have not been playing at a tournament at that level yet. So even though a lot of the attention goes to Herdman, it's the first time these guys are playing in big games like this. And, nerves will get to you. You're going to be playing teams that are better than you. So I get where some of the blame can go to him in positions like Fonzie today. Oh, my goodness. But I still think a lot of it is just Canada's a young team. And they're a team that are, needing more experience. And it comes down to that.
Mikey, how did you think Herdman handled himself after his comments and after his team's performances?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, through 110 minutes of this World Cup, John Herdman could do no wrong. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was deserving of all the praise and everything that we were throwing towards him. But then it all unraveled from there. And I think the one thing that people are going to remember the most about this tournament, especially not in Canada necessarily, but globally, it was the biggest story for Canada at this tournament. It was John Herdman's comments, which came back once again to haunt him.
Yeah.
And that'll, I think, will be what people remember. So to answer your question overall, has his value increased or diminished? I think it's diminished.
Yeah, between now and the next World Cup, there'll be a lot of John Herdman talk, I'm assuming, surrounding Canada.
What do you think?
I think it's fine, honestly. I liked what he did. I like how he bounced back from those comments. I think he knows exactly who his team is. I think he tried different things as well. And at this level, you're going to have managers that are going to do that. You're going to have to tinker here and there. And, he did that. And I thought he really handled himself well, considering what he said. I don't think he actually wanted to say when it comes to Croatia. There was actually another game in this group, by the way. Belgium-Croatia, 0-0. Croatia goes through second place, but the big talking point is Belgium. The golden generation, James. They failed once again. No Euro Cup, no World Cup, bounce out of the World Cup. Biggest disappointment at this World Cup so far?
Well, biggest one? Have to be up there. I mean, listen, we'll get to Germany later, right? As well.
Yeah.
Belgium were poor. I mean, I didn't come out of the group in first place. So that speaks for what I thought about this team.
Yeah.
I thought they had one more kick at the can. And it's not just how they, the fact that they lost certain games, but they just played so poorly with no imagination. Where was Kevin De Bruyne even on the pitch for 3 games? And just there's nothing. And listen, they could have been different. They could have scored today. Lukaku could have scored a hat trick in that second half. It didn't happen. But hey, listen, too bad, right? Experienced bunch of players. They know what needs to be done. So Yeah, if you're a Belgian fan tonight, you're very disappointed, but you're probably quite happy because Bobby Martinez has stepped aside.
Gonzo.
He's gonzo.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a crazy World Cup, let's be honest. Crazy World Cup so far, and they're one of the poster boys for that, I think.
So, Sarah, Roberto Martinez, he steps down after this match against Croatia, and he also mentioned that this was the plan heading into this. I mean, if you're a Belgium supporter, if you're a Belgian player, what do you think of that? That heading into this World Cup, your manager already had it basically down on paper that he was leaving.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, you never want to know that the head of your team is going to be leaving you regardless of what's going to happen, whether you go and win a World Cup or you get knocked out in the group stage. I think for sure that put the Belgian team in a bit of a kind of shaky area because they had no faith in their coach. Their coach, they probably think, is halfway out the door. Think about when Spain lost Lopetegui 2 weeks before the World Cup started and they got knocked out in the match, the group stage. It's such an important relationship for the players to trust the coach and vice versa. I definitely think it messed around in the locker room.
Did the Belgian Federation pick the wrong man for the job?
I think there's a lot that's wrong with Belgium, and that's not just Roberto Martinez. And obviously,
But Mikey,
at the end of the day,
how do you not do it with this team?
it falls on his
Mark Vilmos
shoulders.
failed as well before
Right.
Martinez, right?
The thing is, the margins at this level with this team is so thin. It's either you come out, you get results, or you're scrutinized ridiculously. Not necessarily ridiculous. Some of it's justified, but you're scrutinized heavily, right? And listen, the Canada game again, that was not good. But if you actually look at the Morocco performance, and I thought today against Croatia, they were pretty good. I thought they were all right on the pitch, but results, you have to get the results at that level, and they just didn't do that. Like Romelu Lukaku, as you mentioned, he could have scored 3-4 goals in that second half. If that happens, we're talking about this Belgium team in a completely different light. It's like, how much can the coach really control whether or not Romelu Lukaku's tapping in goals from 6 yards out? That's not on him necessarily, but at the end of the day, yeah, he's the one who takes the bullet for the team.
Yeah, Lukaku came in with an injury, out of form, and he looked exactly like that. Let's go to Group E quickly. Some crazy results. Croatia will be playing Japan, who topped Group E somehow. Spain right behind them. Japan beating Spain 2-1, and Costa Rica and Germany 4-2. The Germans out of the World Cup. We've been talking about disappointing teams. You have Belgium, you have my poor Denmark, and now Germany.
Yeah.
It's a shock, but it doesn't feel like that big of a shock, James.
Well, I mean, they crashed out in the group phase in 2018 as well, right? You look at that. I look at the Germany squad, and there's clearly some very good players there, right? But at the same time, when I think of the Germans of the past, you had these truly world-class warriors who had done everything on the club scene, right? And I don't see those players on this team anymore. They got a new manager who apparently was the next big thing in world football, and Hansi Flick. He hasn't got the job done either. Very disappointing. I mean, there was a moment today where Costa Rica and Japan were going through, and it was so enjoyable to watch that. Besides Sarah, I have to say, we were all really enjoying that. But in the end,
Guess who's going through?
Okay, quickly, Sarah. For Spain, they look so impressive in their first match. Come to this last match. Are you concerned about them heading into the knockout stages of this World Cup?
Always with Spain, it's forever, since I can remember, the concern is the back. It's always been a weakness of Spain. The defense is, I don't know, they're a little shaky, but I also think the lineup that Lucho put today, he made a lot of substitutions. I don't know if it was because he was trying to maybe rest people. In my opinion, I thought it was a little weird because Japan has been playing great football. I didn't think this game was going to be easy ever.
No.
So I don't know. There's definitely something going wrong. And I mean, Unai Simon, every time, if Unai Simon doesn't make a mistake with his feet, are we even in a World Cup? Like every single tournament, this guy does something crazy, and it is so stressful to watch. But Spain's also a team that I think can always turn it around. So
yeah, and Japan deserves a lot of credit as well for topping the group. They'll be taking on Croatia on December 5th, and Morocco against Spain December 6th, which I think might be a fantastic game. By the way.
they're gonna be
Spain,
great.
Morocco, which that's not one-sided, right? Morocco can get through.
I've never said that. They tied it
I'm
in the
just-
World Cup. You
didn't say
gotta
that.
think it's
I didn't say
me.
that. All right, that's it for this segment. Coming up, it's Fast Money Football. We're going to give you picks for the next match day coming up next. Welcome back to Room 442. It's time to make some money. It's Fast Money Football presented by Betano. And coming off a win is James Sharman. Congratulations, you won your bet. You did.
Another
You
one.
didn't even know that.
I didn't know.
You
that.
didn't know that.
I didn't know.
You're on
I'm doing
fire,
pretty well
though.
right now. Yeah.
All right, so give us another one here. Cameroon, Brazil tomorrow. Massive matchup for Cameroon.
Yeah, huge match. They have to win this game, right? It's going to be really open. Brazil, meanwhile, coming off a performance where they didn't look that great, scored late, of course, with that beautiful Casemiro goal. But they're a team, I think, that's prepared now to break out, to show us what they're worth. They could be the only 9-point team at this World Cup, which means nothing overall, but it is crazy, right?
I didn't even realize.
So I'm
Portugal,
taking, yeah, because I could potentially, but that's still not even away from that. But yeah, I'm going Brazil and the over 2.5. Plays easy plus money, so I think to me it's pretty straightforward.
Finishing top of the group is very important because since I think 4 or 5 World Cups ago, if you finish top in your group, that team has won the World Cup. So very important to finish top. Mikey, Serbia, Switzerland. You like the Serbs here?
I do like Serbia here. And when we're talking about disappointing teams at the World Cup, Serbia has to be right up there because I think with the players on this roster, they should be doing a lot better than they're doing right now. But they're taking on a Switzerland team. If you want to talk about disappointing teams, in my opinion, Switzerland's right up there as well. Only 1 goal for, that being said, only 1 goal against. But that being said, like when you look at these two teams, Serbia has to have the edge. And it's Serbia at plus money, not just plus money, like good plus money. I think I'm going to go out on Serbia here.
Yeah,
So.
no, I like Serbia as well. Sarah, coming off a big win, taking Morocco to beat Canada. How dare you? But they did win at plus money. You have Ghana, Uruguay. Did you go for over
Guys.
2.5 red cards?
I should have gone for cards. I should have changed it.
Yeah,
I went for over
absolutely.
2.5 goals, but this game is going to be the best match tomorrow. I don't care what anyone else says. Ghana are looking for El Pistolero Luis Suarez, and they also score a ton of goals. They scored 2 against Portugal, and they scored 3 against South Korea. So them alone, they could score. And Uruguay have not scored 1 goal in this tournament.
I know.
They need to start picking it up and getting it together. And with Darwin Nunez, Cavani, Luis Suarez, I'm hoping that they can at least score to make my bet come true. But, I think this game is going to be so dramatic and crazy, and I cannot wait. I'm going to be eating the popcorn.
Do you think
Just
Suarez
enjoying it.
starts?
I don't know. He didn't start last game, and they played like garbage. He started the game before, and they played like garbage.
I could totally see him and Cavani. Go to the veterans, him and Cavani. Start
No,
the
I
matchup.
think they might because of the drama there. They might.
I like it. I'm going with Portugal against South Korea. This was a tough one. I don't want to lay the money with Portugal like minus 200. And I do expect them to start a really strong team, right? You want to finish top of the group. You want to avoid playing Brazil in the round of 16. So I expect Fernando Santos to start a strong team. I'm going to go Portugal -1 plus 137. That means they have to win by 2. But if win by a goal, it's a push. Why are you shaking your head?
So biased.
No.
So
Me?
biased.
I have Denmark to win the
It
World
is
Cup.
kind of what we do
Sure.
here, though, isn't it? We are very biased.
No, there's no bias here. Come on. Denmark, Tunisia, Japan now. Come on, I'm going with all these teams. All right, that's it for us here in room 442. Thanks for watching, and make sure you stop on by tomorrow.